So today I want to talk about negotiations, and I've been thinking about this quite a lot more recently, especially since I've been able to get like some little success in my negotiations within business. And I see this as something which is quite universal. You could apply it not just like for business situations, but for your day to day, your talk conversations with your partner, like travel plans or whatnot, right? And honestly, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on negotiations as well. There are like a lot more folks who are much more capable than me. I think there are like FBI, like dedicated negotiation experts, which FBI actually trains, right, to handle like situations such as like kidnapping or hostage negotiations and so on. But then I recently read this book, which is called The Never Split the Difference, and it's actually by an expert who is from FBI and has handled such situations in the past. And I found this to be quite interesting because he has been in the field and has a lot of specific knowledge from decades of being in this craftsmanship of handling such high conflict negotiation situations. And he's been able to like translate the specific knowledge to some general principles, and I see that as an interesting take compared to like the usual research led approach where you are starting with theory and then going to practice. This is the other way around, and I found like the stories and examples which were shared in the book to be like quite resonating. And this is my third reread of this book, and I seem to have got some more understanding, I would say, of how to really use those frameworks. I personally think that if you are better prepared, if you do your homework when it comes to tackling a negotiation situation in advance, I think you have an edge over others who might not do the same level of preparation. And that's something which I think all of us could do in some way or the other. And even if we are not like really skilled at it, so what I've done is to kind of translate the core ideas from this book into a form of a template which I could use to prepare myself before I engage in something which is really important. And I just want to show you what I do right now and the questions I ask myself in terms of preparation of what's called, like, I guess, say homework in this case, right? Just want to share a small note that this activity is quite time consuming and it takes a lot of effort to really like think through all these questions, right? It's not an easy task. And the way I think about this is there are like certain decisions which are one way doors and two way doors. It's just this concept from Jeff Bezos for Amazon, right, where he kind of classifies decisions into like these two broad categories. And in his opinion, there are like certain decisions which are quite irreversible. Not that like technically it could be reversed, but that causes a lot of damage, right? So it's important for us to like think through or like take time to decide, and it's okay to like spend some time thinking through what the consequences are of our actions. And I consider it in a similar way, like this whole activity I do like only maybe for certain places where I think I need to prepare myself and engage in it. So yeah, that's just a caveat before we kind of show this template. So yeah, this is what I do right now. I use these questions to prepare myself in terms of anticipating what the opponent in this case wants to achieve, right? I see this as a game theory perspective. There are like incentives and there are like fears and motives. So it's important for us to understand the psychology of the person who we are entering into this negotiation with. And these are just like certain questions which just help us to imagine what those possible scenarios would be where the situations could go south as well. And it's just like a way to mitigate ourselves of risks in terms of not losing this negotiation, right? And these are like just like simple set of questions I've tried to distill in the way I think I've understood from the book. So first thing I ask is like, what do I want? Is there a key goal, right, which we want to achieve? And it's also not possible for you to always achieve what you want, so it's also important for us to know like what is this minimum. And that's, I think, what's roughly called as the BATNA, which is, I think, the better alternative to the negotiation agreement. Important for us to like also have a ceiling as well as a floor. So then it comes to like the psychology. So like, what are they likely afraid of? There could be like certain fears they want to mitigate, and they might also not be very articulate about this. They might not express this openly, right? And it's important for us to unravel those black swans they might not be very explicit about. And one thing which the writer of this book, Never Split the Difference, talks about is that it's important for the other person to be like heard and listened to, and listening is even harder than speaking openly. It's about like consciously understanding what their emotions are and calibrating that in terms of the responses we provide. So he talks about this thing called as accusation audit, which is more like before you enter into the conversation, they might have certain frustrations, right? And it's important for us to like do this preemptive strike in terms of like just opening it out, like just talk about the elephant in the room, right? And talk about this in a way that, yeah, I understand that these are your fears, these are your concerns, and I hear you, right? So I think it's important for us to like do that, because then it kind of changes this whole participation of these two parties into like a back and forth, into a debate or a heated one. Instead, it can be looked at more like they are like coming together, and we're kind of looking at what could be a good solution more open. He has had his ways of doing this, and it's not a very rational, logic driven approach. It's more on like understanding or like dancing with the emotions and trying to like come to a conclusion, right, with this discussion. And he also talks about this thing of mirrors, where you ask certain questions and that kind of helps them to think on their own and come to a reasonable conclusion, right? And that's kind of like the question here, like what. So one is like, what accusation audit should I use? That's one. And the other one is like, what mirror might unlock more. An example here could be like, let's say if the person is saying that your approach was very bad, it just felt rushed. When they say that, they are trying to like express their like fears and uncertainties to us, and the idea is to kind of like mirror back to them the last few sentences, which are really important. So it's more of like understanding which words we need to like emphasize on, and just like mirroring back to them to help them understand that we are consciously listening to what they're saying. Hidden unknowns, as I mentioned earlier, there are like latent needs. It's not always something which is articulate, so it's important for us to like think about it. And also in terms of like, how will we test the implementation? And so even if they say yes, they've agreed to it, are we really sure if that has that commitment or not, right? So we need to kind of also make it much more tangible in terms of what their commitment is. So these are like certain questions which I've personally like been able to like use in my day-to-day in terms of my product practice as well.